Duran Customz interview numero 15. We are saluting, we are honoring Mr. Sorenbaker for his love and his passion for journalism and music, brother. He's worked for Source magazines. He's written for Source magazine, Double XL, LA Times, New York Times, and he's written his book. The History of Gangster Rap from Schoolyd to Kendrick Lamar. The rise of a great American art form, brother. How you doing? Thank you for being here.
Yeah. I'm very grateful. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and I gotta say thank you for what you do, for your interviews and on Unique Access, brother, and your the Great Debaters album reviews. I wouldn't be doing what I do, brother. We wouldn't be having this interview because you're just laid back. Your style of interviewing, brother. Wow, it's amazing.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate the support and the kind words. So thank you very much.
What was it earlier on that propelled you towards journalism, brother? Earlier on, what was it?
When I grew up in Maryland, I grew up right in between Baltimore and Washington.
Wow.
And because of that, Washington, D.C., of course, the nation's capital,
yes.
The national news for a lot of people around the country is our local news because of the government. But then also with Baltimore, I got to see two major cities. I was about 20 miles from each one, 20 miles Baltimore, 20 miles from Washington, D.C. So there was always news going on. And then in my growing up, my parents, especially my dad, liked to read a lot. And so we had the Washington Post newspaper, we had the Baltimore Sun newspaper.
Wow.
And then we also lived about 10 miles from the capital of Maryland, which is Annapolis, and they have a paper called The Capital.
Wow.
So we got those three, but then we also got a fourth newspaper called the Maryland Gazette, which was also closer to where I grew up in Gambrills, and it covered that area. So right away, I was getting four newspapers, and then on TV, we got the Washington news channels and the Baltimore news channels.
Wow.
So there was so much news, so much information coming on all the time. And where I grew up, especially at the time, it's a lot different now, but where I grew up, it was not that much going on. Now it's a lot busier and developed and all that stuff, but when I grew up, it wasn't. So I was always like, man, there's so much going on in Baltimore, so much going on in DC, so much going on in New York and Philadelphia and Los Angeles, wherever. And I was like, I'd like to be involved in that. So I was like, oh, well, the journalists get to fly around, get to talk to people, get to do stuff. And at the same time, I was loving rap. So I was like, oh, well, if I can interview the artists or write about the artists or meet the artists.
The best of both worlds.
Yeah, that was my idea. And since rap was my favorite thing in the world, I was just trying to figure out how I could, Ice-T's character in New Jack Hustler says, how can I be down? So
how can I be down?
So man, I just
what a great movie that was, man. That's one of my favorite songs at the New Jack Hustlers, brother.
That's
Deep cover movie or New Jack Hustlers?
You mean the deep cover song or New Jack Hustler song?
The movie.
Oh, I'd go with New Jack City. I prefer New Jack City.
What's the better soundtrack?
Soundtrack overall is New Jack City. Yes.
You got it, brother. And you're talking about Maryland. Maryland raised Tupac. They gave Tupac his game.
Well, a lot of famous people, a lot of famous, very important people are from Maryland.
Yeah. Yeah. Is it safe to say you were a Baltimore Colts fan then, back in the days?
Actually, at the time, they had a different name, but I was more of a Washington football team fan because my mom was born in Washington, D.C., and then she grew up literally bordering it in Tacoma Park, Maryland, which is, I think, where she grew up was a mile from Washington, D.C.
All right.
So my mom grew up watching the Washington football team, and so did I. I also liked the Colts, but I was much more because of my mom.
John Riggins, man.
Yeah, John Riggins, Doug Williams, Art Monk.
Doug Williams. Yeah, there you go, bro. Yeah.
Mark Duper. We had all kinds of people. The Hogs.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of people.
I just remember that was it 83 or when he broke his leg and he still played, man. Was it
Theismann?
Oh, Theismann, you're right.
No, Theismann, he was done. He never played again, I don't think.
Oh, okay. My bad. My bad. What was it specifically about hip hop that pulled you in and grabbed your attention, brother? What was it about hip hop?
Well, when I was 10 is when I fell in love with rap and then hip hop culture. And basically, I loved the music because, interestingly enough, I really felt like I could identify with it. My friend Tom Erdely had made me a tape. I went to elementary school with him.
Yes.
When I was around 10, I asked him I said, hey, man, have you heard any of this rap stuff? And I kind of like what I heard. Is there any more of it? He's like, dude, there's a lot of rap. I was like, really?
Wow.
So he made me a tape. And on the tape, it was Nightmares by Dana Dane.
Wow.
It was Big Mouth by Houdini, You Talk Too Much, Run DMC, Roxanne, UTFO, The Show by Dougie Fresh, MC Ricky D, and the Get Fresh crew. So there were all these stories. And then I was big into playing basketball. So there was Basketball by Curtis Blow was on there. So these songs, I could identify with liking a girl and her not liking me, like Roxanne. I could identify with playing basketball with Curtis Blow. I could identify with having a nightmare like Dana Dane described.
Dana Dane, man. Weren't they all in the group, Slick Rick, Dana Dane, in high school or something like that, right?
Yeah, they were in the Kango crew together.
Kango crew, right? Yeah. Definitely.
So I loved all that. And then I didn't understand this till later about myself, but I've always been very drawn to percussion. So I really like drums. And in that time of 1985, 86, 84, 83, most of the music that was being made was largely drum driven. Yeah. And then I liked the sound of scratching. So it was all this stuff. And then I also didn't like and didn't feel connected to, or that I could relate to, a lot of the rock music that was going on that some of my white friends were listening to, or that I would see. We didn't have a cable at the time, but when I go to my friend's house, if they were playing MTV or something, I liked it, but I wasn't like gung ho about it. So when I heard rap, I was like, this is it. This is what I want.
This is my home right here, right? I remember I have a similar story too. Like my brothers would bring home cassette tapes that had mixed songs on it, and I remember it had Sir Mix-a-Lot on there, Square Dance Rap.
Oh yeah.
And growing up in Huntington Park, you know, in Southern California over here, and then we later on moved to the San Gabriel Valley, I used to think that he was Eazy-E because that voice, you know what I'm saying? I swore I was like, and I was blown away, like, oh man, because around that same time, Boys in the Hood came out, you know?
Right.
So, yeah. So
that's great.
What was your first piece of vinyl you purchased and where at, brother? Do you remember, if you could recall?
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question, but the closest thing I can remember is when I was a kid, I'd already had vinyl, I'd already had albums and all this stuff, but I do remember the first time I asked for vinyl or an album for Christmas and my parents got it for me was Houdini's Open Sesame album.
Wow.
So that was the first one I remember getting that was special. And my parents, thankfully, I'm very fortunate that my mom and my dad have really supported me and encouraged me. And that started when I was a little kid with rap. They would help me, you know, do jobs or take me to the record store, mainly my dad. But when I got that Christmas present, man, I was so excited. Excited.
Houdini, dude. Don't get no better than Houdini, one of the greatest groups of all time, dude.
Absolutely.
Definitely, brother. 5 Minutes of Funk, man, friends, shoot. Who are some of your favorite artists and albums of all time, brother? You know?
Well, my favorite artist is Schoolyd. He's my favorite. He's my
PSK?
hero. Yep. He's my favorite rapper. There's so many reasons I like him. And, you know, a lot of people aren't very familiar with him, but they're familiar with the people who have sampled him. Biggie remade one of his songs.
Yeah. On the double album, right?
Yeah. The B.I.G. interlude.
That's, yeah.
PSK.
That's the PSK right there.
Absolutely. And then Jay-Z remade it more recently. One of the more recent ones, which is now a little bit older, but Nicki Minaj on Bees in the Trap, the song with 2 Chainz, she used the PSK flow on there.
All right.
And then you know, DJ Premier sampled them. Jay-Z used the PSK beat.
And if it wasn't for PSK, we wouldn't have 6 in the morning, correct?
That's correct. We wouldn't have Boys in the Hood, maybe.
We wouldn't have, there you go.
The first 3 real songs that made gangster rap what it is are PSK, What Does It Mean by Schoolyd, that came out in 85. You got 6 in the Morning with Ice-T in 86. And then in 87, you got Boys in the Hood by Eazy-E. So
Wow.
those are the three main ones that kicked it all off and got us to where we are.
Definitely, brother. And I was listening to Gangster Boogie, man, from from Schoolyd. Wow. And he's talking about selling weed and doing all this. Whoa, dude. That's badass. Man.
Yeah, that was 84. PSK,
yeah, that was 84.
PSK and Gucci Time were the single that came out in 85, but Gangster Boogie didn't get nearly as popular, and in my opinion, wasn't nearly as good as PSK or Gucci Time, but he still did it, and he still was cussing and
talking about. Even for me, like just hearing that, like selling weed, like, man, shit, dude, I never heard nobody talk about that earlier on like that. Man, I was I love all your interviews, man. The ones with Colt 187, Ice-T, and then I was looking at the one with Yella. And I had watched previous interviews, and I was thinking, man, if I get a chance to interview Yella, I'm going to mention this question. And you mentioned it about Kid Frost, man. But I had thought that it was on Terminator, and he had produced it. But you're right, it was rough cut, and he was scratching on it, right? I don't even think Yella remembered too much though when you brought it up, huh?
No, he didn't remember until I said it, and he's like, oh yeah. But that's
very knowledgeable, man. You're very knowledgeable.
Thank you. Well, the thing is, as I hope you can tell, it seems you do, but I just love rap, man. It's my favorite thing in the world. So since I was 10, I've been studying it, and thankfully I have, knock on wood, a good memory, so I remember a lot. But I also actively listen to it and study it and read about it and all these things, and steadily talking to people and always trying to learn more and find different things about it because I love it.
Yeah. Have you ever interviewed Kid Frost?
I have not, that I recall.
Okay. How about Toker from the Bronx side? Did you ever get a chance to interview him?
No, unfortunately, I did not.
Wow. From being a big fan of hip hop to becoming a journalist.
Wait, I take it back. I have interviewed Frost.
Oh, did you?
I was thinking of a different place, but now I remember I did interview Frost. I believe it was a mic check in the Source.
Okay.
When he was on Relativity Records.
Okay. Because he was also signed to Ruthless, I believe, after his second album. Was it the Smile Now, Cry Later one? I believe.
That's the same era.
Okay.
At Relativity.
Yes. Right. Cool, man. That's awesome.
Yeah, it was just over the phone, though, unfortunately. When I think of, if I've interviewed people, I usually think of in person.
In person, okay.
But I got to remember sometimes I just talk to them over the phone.
Wow, that's awesome, brother. So from being a big fan of hip hop to becoming a journalist, brother, and working for Source Magazine, Double XL, writing for Hip Hop DX, and so on. How was that transition, or did it come naturally, and how did it feel?
I mean, I've been very fortunate. I started off in college at Xavier University in Cincinnati, Ohio. I started writing for the school newspaper, the Xavier Newswire.
Yes.
And from there, once I started getting published, I just would send out my articles to any place I saw that wrote about rap. And of course, I wanted to write for the Source and Rap Sheet and Rap Pages and Vibe and Double XL and all those, because those were some of my favorite magazines. But then growing up, as I was mentioning, with my parents reading all the newspapers, I wanted to write for the Washington Post and I wanted to write for the Baltimore Sun, and I was able to do so, which was amazing. And then, I knew the Chicago Tribune, I knew the LA Times, I knew the New York Times, just because they're such prominent newspapers, and I was getting into journalism. So to be able to write for all three of them, and with the Chicago Tribune and the LA Times in particular, the LA Times I wrote for more than a decade, and the Tribune was around the same. It was a little bit shorter than that, but it was definitely a long time. And I just been very fortunate, man, because I work hard and I hustle and I do as much as I can. And it's
what a great resume. 10 years for writing for the LA Times, brother. Wow.
Yeah, I wrote hundreds of articles for them. I might be even close to 1,000.
Wow. Even just with that, man, I'd be happy to be like, you know what I say? But you got a great resume, brother. Like, damn, dude.
Thank you.
What by far has been your most memorable interview, and why?
That's always a tough one because I've had so many. But just to use Schoolyd, my favorite, I remember the first time I had been trying to interview him, and then in '95, he was putting out an album, And so I called up the label at the time and I asked them. They're like, yeah, we'll get you an interview with them. This was going to be for Rap Sheet, who I was writing for at the time, thanks to my friend and mentor, Billy Johnson Jr.
Wow.
And so Billy said I could do an article on Schoolyd. So then I called up the label, got in touch with his publicist, started setting it up. And then one day she just called me. She's like, "Oh, do you still want to interview Schoolyd?" And I was like, "Yeah, of course."
Wow.
She's like, "Oh, can you do it in 5 minutes? Because he's available." And I was like, "Wait, what?" So I didn't have any notes. I didn't have any time to think about it or anything.
Wow. So
and
you just freestyle.
I ended up talking to him for more than 3 hours.
Wow.
Because I'd been listening to him at that point for around 10 years. And I had all these questions and all these things that I always had wanted to ask him, and I got to do it. And at the end of the interview, and this has been said to me many, many times, including by him more than once, but he always is like, "Man, Soren, like, I really thought you were a lot older because you know so much about me. Like, I can't believe you're so young." But I'm like, "Hey, man, you're my favorite rapper, and you've done a lot in the game." So it was amazing, man. It was amazing. And he told me that he doesn't like to do a lot of interviews, but he's really glad that he talked to me. And again, I'm in college. I'm a kid. I would have been around 20, give or take, at the time. So
yes. Wow, amazing, man. What an amazing story. You got to interview your idol and everything. And you mentioned rap pages, bro. So you kind of seem like you work for every major hip hop magazine that has been out there, right? That I can remember. You just yeah.
Not all, but
The Source, Hip Hop DX, Rap Sheets, and then
Rap Pages,
Double XL. Yeah,
I started writing for Rap Pages when I was in college, and then I got a job in 1998 through Alan Gordon hired me, and then I worked there for a little less than 2 years before it got shut down. Larry Flint was the owner at the time, and then he shut it down and sold it. And so that was heartbreaking because I got my first job. I had moved from Maryland to California for the job. Wow. And then I was like, "Oh, man, it wasn't even 2 years. What's going on?" But, you know, I just was like, "Man, I got to work harder. I got to believe in myself, and I got to buckle down." And then, like I said, my friend Billy Johnson, he came through and helped me get a job at Launch, which was a Yahoo subsidiary. And then, yeah, man, I've been very fortunate to have a lot of great friends to help me and look out for me. And then also just trying to work hard and do a great job every time.
Yes. And then I have that Eazy-E rap sheet one, man. Did you ever get to interview Eazy-E?
No, unfortunately. By the time he passed away, you know, I was only writing for only around a year. So, you know, I wasn't able to interview the big A-list artists yet. But he's, of all the artists that I didn't get to interview or see perform, he's the one. He would have been the one.
Yeah, Eazy-E, man. But at least you got to interview Ren and Yella, man. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I've interviewed all the rest of them. I've interviewed.
Have you?
Yeah, I've written a lot about Ice Cube over the years. I've interviewed him probably 15, 20 times. And then Dr. Dre, I've interviewed several times too and hung out with him and been in the studio with Dre a few times. So, and then Ren, you know, I'm friends with Ren, so I talk to him occasionally or periodically. And then Yella, I've interviewed a few times as well.
Do you remember that CPO right there, Battle of the Menace with Ren, right?
Of course.
CPO and Ren, the remix, man. That was a great
Boss Hog.
Boss Hog, brother. How long did it take for you to write and publish your book, The History of Gangster Rap, brother? Or was it just an accumulation of all that you have done and you kind of just sat there and put it together? You know what I'm saying? Throughout the years.
Well, it's a combination of both. So it took me around a year, and that's because mainly to track down the artists. Because what I did with The History of Gangster Rap is I wanted it to be almost all, I really wanted it to be all, but it ended up being almost all original reporting. So if there's a quote from the DOC or MC Ren or Ice-T or Schoolyd, it's from me talking to him for the book.
Wow.
I did a little bit, but I tried to do almost no outsourcing. So I didn't want to have, when Ice when Ice Cube talked to somebody else, I didn't want to quote that. I wanted to quote Ice Cube told me something. So that's what I did for the overwhelming majority of the book. And I interviewed more than 30 artists, and there were about 4 or 5 that I wasn't able to get with, but then I'd interviewed them. So I just used my own interviews from back in the day.
Wow.
So yeah, man, it took about a year to really write it. And then, you have to go through the editing and looking at the pictures and doing all that stuff. So yeah.
Did you do a documentary also for that, or was it just the book itself?
At this point, it's just a book, but we're working on trying to get a documentary or a series going. So
that would be dope, man.
That's something I'm working on trying to get off the ground right now.
Awesome, brother. Awesome. You mentioned the DOC right now. What would the landscape of West Coast hip hop been if he didn't get injured, his voice injured, brother?
I definitely think it would have been different. How, I don't know, because the thing is, since the DOC works so much with Dre, and since he works so much with Snoop, and he works so much with NWA, he was still in that mix. And
it's relevant in there, right?
So we lost him as a frontline artist, even though later, he put out the Helter Skelter album and then the Deuce album.
Yes.
And he's on skits on Brothers for Life and on other things. But of course, as everyone knows, he's evolved much more into a songwriter.
That No One Could Do It Better album, man. That's a tremendous album. I hold that one in high regards, even just because he never cussed in that album. Neither. It was
barely.
Barely true MC style, and his power and his voice, the way he would stop, Worldwide Pyramid. And another album that I hold in high regards at that time was the Low Profile, the Dub C album, brother. I feel the same way, brother. Definitely.
Yes, he and DJ Aladdin had a lot going on there, man.
DJ Aladdin, one of the original mix masters, right?
He's amazing.
Yeah,
he's amazing.
What is your favorite place to go and search for vinyl records, brother? Whether it be, you've been worldwide, so talk to us about some places like that you've got to travel and search for vinyl records, brother.
Well, I've been to a lot of record stores, but the ones I had the most experience were a few in Baltimore. But then even though they're not super obscure, I did like going to Amoeba when it was in Hollywood, and I liked all the different Tower records, because the thing that Tower Records had that I really enjoyed was that growing up in Maryland, they had, I would say, 90 to 95% of the stuff I wanted. I would go to all kinds of record stores, not just Tower. But I noticed when I would be traveling in college or when I started traveling for work, when I would go to a different city or state, I could still go to Tower Records because everybody knew where that was, and I could find some independent rap that I'd either only read about or heard about or what have you. So when I would go to a Memphis, I could get Tommy Wright III, and no one was that wasn't in Maryland, but I found it in the Memphis area or Nashville area. Nice. So that was something I really enjoyed, and it was just like, oh man, I read about this 3 months ago, and I finally can get it.
Wow, nice. How about go ahead, brother. Go ahead.
Yeah, so that was it really. It's just and at that point I was getting much more CDs than vinyl.
Yes.
Because vinyl, as you're well aware, is harder to move and transport and all that stuff. Whereas a CD, you can it was a lot
definitely in the 90s. That's all we have. A majority of mine and my brother's collection CDs, man, because like we said, we can't pop in a record, right? Especially in the 90s, brother. It was all about the CDs and stuff.
Yeah.
How about any would you frequent any mom and pop shops out there in Maryland to pick up any music? Because I know out here in the San Gabriel Valley, we had it was a staple in the San Gabriel Valley, Mauricio's Records. We would head there. We would know for sure if Tower Records or the warehouse didn't have it, we would go there, brother. You know what I'm saying? Was there a spot like that specifically for you guys out there in Maryland and stuff like that? Or
well, the great thing for me is that my second favorite form of music is go-go, which is indigenous to Washington, D.C. So I was close to Annapolis and I was close to Bowie. So I kind of was equidistant, about 8 to 10 miles from each. And more or less, those two cities, I could go and get more or less whatever I wanted, including in Bowie, at Waxy Maxi's and Kent Mill Records, which were
Nice.
smaller regional chains.
Yes.
They both had a lot of go-go stuff. So that was exciting for me because I still love go-go, and I was able to get some stuff there that even wasn't in Annapolis.
Wow.
So I was very fortunate to grow up where I did because most of the stores there, because Baltimore and Washington, especially when I was growing up, had such huge Black populations and really supported rap as far as on the consumer side of things.
Yes.
It was easy. Once I started going and as I was growing up, rap was just getting more and more popular. So it was easier to find, and it was not a big deal to be able to find records if you wanted to. Or they would, since I started to get to know some of the people at Kent Mill Records and Bowie in particular, or Waxy Maxi's, they would like look stuff up for me, or they would order it for me. And
wow, cool.
Back then, whatever the price was, it was $13.99 or whatever. If they ordered it for you, it was the same price as anything else. So
yes.
I remember, having to do that with like King T Records or certain things that they might have only ordered one or two. They're like, "Oh man, we sold out of that." And I said, "Well, please, could you get another one? I'll buy it." They're like, "Sure." So
at your own risk, man. King T, brother.
Amazing stuff.
Amazing stuff, brother. From being a journalist and then your love for music, have you ever been tempted to write and drop a track, brother?
No.
And some rhymes and drop.
I wrote one little kind of freestyle rap once, and I rapped it to myself in my bedroom.
Yes.
And that was it. One thing is I never really pursued being an artist because as a kid, I didn't understand or appreciate the fact that a lot of my favorite artists growing up were 5, 10, 15 years older than me. For some reason, it didn't register that if I tried rapping or practiced it, that one day I'd be a better writer or I'd have a chance. So I just never thought about it. It just never occurred to me to try to pursue it. And being in Maryland, there wasn't, at that time and where I grew up, there wasn't any studio, there wasn't a record company. There was nothing. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Damn. So if you could make a super group in hip hop, who would be in it? 3 artists, 3 MCs, brother, and what would it be called?
Man, I'd go with my favorite and then the top 2 in my opinion. So it would be Schoolyd, LL Cool J, and KRS-One.
Ooh, man.
And I just call it, I might even call it Gangster Boogie, because
nice.
LL, LL, people forget how hardcore he was and how great he is.
Booming systems, man. Shoot. That's all we would bump here. That bass, man, my brothers would have that bumping all the time, dude. You know what I'm saying? Like,
and then KRS-One on the first Boogie Down Productions will come to mind it, but KRS-One is so phenomenal. So those 3, I think, Schoolyd, all 3 of them, but really Schoolyd, and I think to some degree KRS-One and LL all did beats also, so they could really make the music, produce, do all the raps, and do it themselves.
Knowledge reigns supreme over nearly everyone, brother.
That's right. That is true.
What would you say to a young person who wants to follow in your footsteps and inspired by your journalism, brother? What would you say to them?
I mean, the main thing is you have to love it, because especially at first, most likely there's going to be little to no money. So you have to get into it because you love it. Yes. And from there, you got to like love it. Then you got to read as much as you can and listen to as much music as you can. And then write as much as you can or do as many interviews. Yeah. So you can't wait for opportunities. You got to create your own, and then other opportunities will come to you.
Will follow in place.
And that's something that I tried to do, and I still do that till today, because, even though I've done a lot of stuff, I'm still not, not every single person calls me to do something. I want to get to the point where I'm too busy because I got 17 people wanting me to do this, and I don't have time. that's what I want to be, but I'm not there. So I got a lot, I still got a lot to do myself.
And you still remain calm and humble through all this, brother. I don't know how you do it, brother. You're like,
Well, thank you.
what was more amazing? Was it working for Source Magazine, being a fan of hip hop, or co-hosting a show at K-Day, the open bar radio with Exhibit, brother? Being that it was K-Day-E-Y, A-Y, brother. What was more fulfilling to you as a rap fan?
As a rap fan, I would probably say it was more K-Day, really, because Exhibit and I are friends. And with the Source, when I worked staff for them, I was in Los Angeles. I wasn't in the office, and I would fly in. And the Source, of course, I grew up loving and admiring, and I'm eternally grateful for all the opportunity. The difference was with Exhibit, he and I would pick the guests. He would book the guest. I would book the guest. So I was really, in addition to co-hosting Exhibit, when he invited me and his uncle Vidal to co-host it with him, that was just amazing because A, I'm friends with Exhibit. B, we got to pick the artists and coordinate the interviews. We got to pick our own music that we played.
Wow.
And
that's dope.
And to just be able to highlight a lot of the great West Coast artists that normally didn't get a lot of shine. Like we interviewed the DOC for Open Bar Radio. We had MC Ren on Open Bar Radio. Yes. And then we brought MC Ren back and had MC Ren and DJ Yella on when Straight Outta Compton, the movie, came out. Yeah. So to be able to do that, we were, I think, if not, I think, we were the first radio interview ever of Vince Staples because I had been following him.
Yes. Yes.
And I was able to, like, something that I'm always excited and proud of, that, you know, I was able to, like, see how amazing he was. So,
and not only that, they had Eazy-E had Ruthless radio shows there too on KDY, man. So you followed in suit with them. So that's awesome, brother. What an amazing
and Exhibit. You know, Exhibit is a great dude. He's hilarious. And I've had a lot of fun with him over the years, just being with him in different cities and states. You know, I've been in Hawaii, been all through California and Illinois, different places with Exhibit. And we just have a lot of fun. He's a hilarious dude. So,
and his family tree is King T too, right? With the alcoholic.
Yeah, King T, put him on. Yep. Yeah.
I'm going to ask you questions. You pick one. Jay-Z or Nas?
Well, it depends the criteria.
Your favorite as an MC, brother? What do you?
I prefer Nas.
Okay, so I won't even ask you about Rakim or Big Daddy Kane because I already know where you're gonna go with it. What was a better diss song, Dre Day or Real Motherfucking G's?
Dre Day.
Dre Day. Okay. Foxy Brown, Little Kim, or Lady of Rage?
Man, that's a tough one. I'll put it like this. The most underrated and underappreciated of the three is Foxy Brown.
Yo, Nana, man. Badass. I love Foxy Brown. If you could make a mixtape volume 1 of your life, what would be track number 1 of Sorenbaker's life?
Of my life?
Yeah.
That's a tough one. I mean, my favorite rap song ever is It Takes Two by Rob Bass and DJ AZ Rock. So I'll go with that.
Nice. What was a better soundtrack, Boys in the Hood or Menace to Society?
Man, I'd have to go with Boys in the Hood because I liked not only did I like both, but I liked the R&B songs on Boys in the Hood. And I think that they brought a lot of depth, not only to the soundtrack, but it works so well with the film.
Yes.
Tony, Just Me and You, for instance. Like, that's maybe my favorite song on the soundtrack. It's not even a rap song.
Wow.
I love that song.
How about then baseball, right? From Main Source was on there too.
Friendly Game of Baseball, yeah.
Every single Sunday, Cam. Yeah. What's your favorite Compton's Most Wanted album?
Man, it always goes between Straight Checking 'Em and Music to Drive By, but I'd say Straight Checking 'Em because that one, I think, production-wise, it was really a step up from It's a Compton thing. And then Music to Drive By, I think, is astoundingly great, but it's more of one thing. It's very dark and very sinister, and that's the way it is through most of the album. Whereas Straight Checking Them, I think there's a little more sonic variance. You got like I Don't Dance, and even Drive By Miss Daisy with some of the sonics and the piano and stuff is a little different.
And go ahead, bro.
They're both
classic.
It's hard to say, but I would go with Straight Checking.
Yeah, I like the first one, man. One time gaffled them up, man. That whole final chapter, and then wow, that was an amazing album for me. And I barely put 2 and 2 together. When you were doing your interview with Yella, DJ Unknown and him were working at the Penthouse.
Yeah,
he later on produced those albums, DJ Unknown, right, and Slit, right? Wow, that's crazy. Amazing, brother. Tell us where we could find you at, brother. Where to subscribe to and where we could get that book.
Well, for me, you can get all my social medias just at Sorenbaker, at SORENBAKER. And then, of course, on my YouTube channel, if you could please go there. All that social media and on YouTube is Uniqueaccessent. So that's UNIQUEACCESSENT. Unique Access Entertainment on YouTube. And then my book, The History of Gangster Raps, in stores worldwide. You can get it at, of course, Amazon, and then also Barnes & Noble and your local bookstore. If you shop independent bookstores, you can order it through there. And also, if you're around the world somewhere, if you're in Japan, we have a Japanese version. If you're in Italy, we have an Italian version. If you're in Russia, we have a Russian version, and we also have a Spanish version. So it's been translated into 4 languages at this point, 5 if you include English. And so amazing, I'm very excited about that.
You got any autographed copies that you're selling of your book?
No, but I can always sign one.
Yeah, definitely, brother. Peace, love, and light, man. Thank you so much for taking your time to be here with Duran Customz, brother. Keep up the amazing work that you're doing, and I can't wait to see what the future holds for you, brother. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, well, likewise. Thank you, Duran Customz, for the support, and I, really appreciate it. Thank you.
Peace, love, and light, and we out of here. Peace.